between what law promises to offer and the actual reality of law. Padma Bhushan Professor Dr. N.R. Madhava Menon, considered the father of modern legal education in India, was an advocate for the inclusion of clinical courses in legal education. He pursued a lifelong commitment to bringing socially relevant legal education to India and refers to clinical legal education as a pedagogic technique that has its focus on the learners and the process of learning. As such, it is of utmost importance to understand how to inculcate clinical legal education into the system, and to not simply pass the responsibility of training law students in practical matters onto law books. The distinguished speaker for the day who will be enlightening us about the aforementioned topic is Professor Dr. Bhavani Prasad Panda. I welcome you, sir, and wholeheartedly thank you for committing to this event. I would also like to welcome our ever-inspiring principal, Dr. John P.C., who endeavors to kindle our intellectual spirit, and our reliable and insightful director, Reverend Dr. Koshi Isaac Punamutal. I extend a warm welcome to our twin pillars of endless support and guidance, our vice principals, Professor Dr. Thomas Kuti PG and Professor V. Ramachandran Nair. I also welcome Dr. Jijamoon V.S., the head of Department for Law, and also the chair coordinator for Padma Bhushan Professor N.R. Madhava Menon Chair on Legal Education, and the diligent faculty for their efforts to make this fruitful event happen. I cordially welcome our eager faculty and rapt attendees to this productive session. I would like to start the session by inviting our director, Reverend Dr. Koshi Isaac Punamutal, to extend a warm welcome to our guest. Father, please.
Yeah, thank you. Our distinguished guest of honor of the day, Professor Dr. Bhavani Prasad Panda, our principal, Dr. John P.C., vice principals, our HOD, dear faculty members, and my dear students. A very good morning to all. Mar Gregorius College of Law has established a chair in loving memory of a great legal visionary, the father of modern legal education in India, Professor Dr. N.R. Madhava Menon, who was an adjunct professor of this college. Let us bow our heads before the loving memories of Madhava Menon sir, an eminent personality who dedicated his whole life to uplift the standards of the legal education system and career in the legal field. He spent his whole life in bringing the legal education in India to the global standards. In our college, clinical legal education is inculcated as an active component of our pedagogy, not only to promote the principles of learning by doing, but also to ensure our institution's social commitment and to imbibe in our students social and professional values that help in the betterment of the society. The Republic of India, the world's largest democracy, even after 75 years of independence, is still struggling to bridge the gap between the marginalized and the privileged. Our constitution envisages an India that ensures to all its citizens justice, liberty, equality, and fraternity. As professionals of law, we are equipped the best to make that dream a reality. Our initiatives under Padma Bhushan Dr. N.R. Madhava Menon Chair on Legal Education is to ensure quality legal education to a generation of socially committed professionals of law. It gives me immense pleasure to welcome Dr. Bhavani Prasad Panda, a recipient of the prestigious N.R. Madhava Menon Best Law Teacher Award and a socially committed academician. He is the best person to speak on the subject, as he is the masterly skilled and authoritative person who can handle this session. He is a person who has closely followed the vision of renowned and legendary law teacher Padma Bhushan Professor Dr. N.R. Madhava Menon, while he was the Vice Chancellor of MNLU Mumbai. Yes, sir, on behalf of Mar Gregorius College of Law family, I wholeheartedly welcome to this session. I welcome all the faculty members and students to this session. I wish you all a fruitful webinar. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Father. Our erudite speaker of the day, Dr. Panda, is currently director of the Kalinga Institute of Industrial Technology, School of Law. He completed his LLM from Andhra University and went on to secure a doctorate and a postdoctorate degree from Behrampur University, Odisha. In a career spanning over 4 decades, Professor Panda has worked in various academic and administrative capacities at Utkal University, Behrampur University, and the WB National University of Juridical Sciences, Kolkata. He is also the founding Vice Chancellor of the Maharashtra National Law University, Mumbai, and formerly Professor of Eminence at the Damodaram Sanjeevayya National Law University, Visakhapatnam. In 2016, Professor Panda was conferred the prestigious Sylph Millat N.R. Madhava Menon Best Law Teacher Award in recognition of his contribution to the field of legal education in India. It is an honor to have you here with us today, sir, and I am pleased to invite you to take over this session. Sir, please.
Sir, you are muted, sir.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, respected father, respected principal, vice principal, and the HOD of this particular program. And I am really indebted to you all people for giving this particular wonderful opportunity to address a very coveted lecture in memory of my teacher and Padma Bhushan N.R. Madhava Menon. He is just not a name to me, he is everything for me. And I learned what law is, how to teach law, and how to live with law. He is a man who has made his life law a mission. And he has created, today there are around 26 law universities which are national, state reputed universities. All the credit goes to Professor N.R. Madhava Menon. Law professors becoming vice chancellor was only possible because of Professor Madhava Menon. And Madhava Menon has brought a revolution in legal education. When I was a student, there was no dignity for legal education. And it was Professor Madhava Menon who brought a new distinct and life and dignity to legal education. Today, across the country, people are feeling happy to study law and speak about law and do something with respect to law because of the dignity that has been enhanced by the involvement and seriousness in teaching and making the people see that law is functional. To make law functional is the biggest challenge. We don't have any dearth of law. There's a lot of law. So I will restrict my discussion to only to the point how clinical courses and clinical educations can be made more relevant. Because Professor Madhava Menon has chosen this particular topic for a long time. And it was very dear to him, right from the days of Bangalore Law School. And he continued this particular mission. To some extent he achieved, to some extent he couldn't achieve. And I'll try to share his story of planning what clinical legal education means and clinical legal education has to happen and how it can happen. In a way, the future of legal education is clinical education. But this is hardly realized. There is a gap. The moment a student completes his course, he is not able to go to the practice. The day he'll be able to go to practice directly without depending on anybody after completing his education, taking his degree to the practice modes, that day probably we can claim that we have accomplished our job as law teachers and law schools, that we have created really a course meaningful enough by which a student is able to go and have his earning. Clinical education definitely and essential speaks about the skills. And here law is to be conceived in the social context and studied in terms of social dynamics, that is rarely happening. We have been reading jurisprudence, we have been reading contract, we have been reading family law, we have been reading plethora of laws, almost around 60 papers we study in 5-year schools. And but how to contextualize socially and make it relevant, that is the question. It demands this particular as an agenda of making the laws contextual to the societal needs, demands a variety of approaches and skills from legally trained persons. And now the question is, when we know pretty well what are as a theoretician in the law schools, whatever they were teaching, despite the best interests and best idea that we have to promote clinical legal education. Even those particular 4 compulsory papers which have been assigned with the Bar Council of India, we really do not know the method how to teach them. And whatever the assignment that have the direction that have come out from Bar Council of India Legal Education Committee, we've been following them blindly. But being a theoretician, without understanding about the practical realities, we tend to speak of the theories, and somehow the students are also no more interested in going to the nitty-gritty, and ultimately they get the degree and they are back to square one. We know pretty well, whenever you are conducting a course, the students find it difficult. The advocate do say, oh, you completed a law degree, you have taken enrollment today, come on, you start your fundamentals from today onwards. Forget what all you read in the law school. Start thinking and re-looking to the things into the practice mode. And again, a new education is being offered, and which is at individual level by the advocate to the junior. This is how the course goes on. But the course doesn't happen. The course really doesn't happen. In other words, there's a gap between the education that we've been offering and the practice that is happening. And this is the crux, how we can bridge it up. The legal analysis has to be essentially, it has to ideate and construct policies, evaluate the law and integrate them along with the social process. These things should happen. And for this particular reason, law is not one-dimensional. It's not a monolithic. It's really a multi-dimensional, multidisciplinary, and all these days we have been studying in a doctrinal mode. What is essentially the empirical mode now? Whenever you look into social reality, it is observation. Out of this particular observation, what is called as experiential learning, or experience, what it entails to understanding the situations, and it becomes imperative of the study of law. And this, whatever the goals of the legal education, should be supplemented with this particular type of pedagogy. How do I understand? How do I accumulate? And how do I really experiment and practice tomorrow in the world when the real life situation comes? And there's a great deal of scope to reorganize the curriculum on functional or processual lines rather than on the subject content matter. For a moment, when you're studying law of contract, we know pretty well the equivalent books are there, Cheshire, Feffert, and Phipson. All these books are wonderful, including the Indian authors, and they are being taught regularly and religiously to the students, essentials of contract, X, Y, Z, and all those things. And but how to make this particular contract relevant to the society? And we know pretty well every day in and day out we are dealing with contracts. It's a transactional society today. It's a business society today. And in this particular business society, we never look into the contracts that whatever you are reading in the books, how they are being used in the society today. In other words, if we can change the title, I don't know. I know pretty well. I'm not speaking of At a school level, what you can do, or at the school level, what you can do, I'll be telling you that later. But definitely we can think of reorganizing the subjects and course curriculum in different manner. It can be called as law and economic development, and the contract can be inbuilt somewhere, or law and industrial development. These are not my words, my dear friends. These are the ideas what Professor Menon was to advocate. Probably that way we can look into the things. The function role of law of contract is more important than the substantive doctrinal aspects of law of contract. This is equal to the applied law of contract to the conceptual substance of contracts. So we are looking at the application. That application side is hardly connected. Critical issues of legal relevance, for example, housing, public distribution system, poverty, rural realities, urban conflicts, pollution of environment, all these things are not one mold law. You cannot find one particular piece of law and that's going to address this particular situation. When such a legal problem is going to come to you, you need to think something different. Not only thinking like a liar, but something different. Probably acting like a liar. How are you going to act that way? This is the question. And we know pretty well when the problem comes to us, then we start thinking. We don't really imbibe the particular problem of the society, which is called as problem of poverty, or rural reality, or vulnerable communities, difficulties. These things can be wonderful field of exposure. These particular aspects can be wonderful situations where you can make a empirical study. Once you make an empirical study, you understand the social reality. Once you understand the social reality and you start sharing the values, then you realize how important you are politically and socially. And once you're socially and politically connected, you're able to draw down your own standards. Until and unless you draw down your own standards, you're not an ethical person. So every particular ethical person, he sets the standard for himself. So this particular thing is possible when you are really in the field. The doctrinal analysis and the policy analysis is only one vital part of the entire legal study. What are we studying in the books? They are only one part of the study. All the 5 years courses. And the study that is happening in the fields is the other second part. And at the law schools we are only doing only one part of the study and leaving a big gap, the second part. The second part, for that reason, the advocates and the bar, when you go to them for practice and join as a junior, they simply smile at you and tell, come on, forget what all you learned at the law school. Start learning from today, whatever I say. And what the senior counsel says? Senior counsel never says to you in a continuous lecture session or pedagogical or a takeaway or giving mood. It is for you to learn by seeing him and seeing his behavior and his manners, his dealings in the society. And he creates an opportunity for you. You become an observer by which you learn things. And this particular person we are not able to imbibe in the students in the recent days. So the legal language provides the applied contours of the logic, which can take you to the logical ends. So once you experience this particular practical part of the life, then only you can do the things. For wholesome legal education, the need of training in a variety of advocacy skills is very important. Frankly speaking, friends, we teachers who have directly come from the school and become teachers hardly had any exposure in the practice and practical matters. Whenever a practical situation comes to us, we tend to be theoretical and doctrinal. We read the books, try to find the answers, and those answers seldom are found in that particular book. And we are not able to, whatever the answer that we will be able to give against a bookish answer. And bookish answer doesn't really work out in the profession. So what is required, what type of skill it is that you have to underline. And that skill, unfortunately, is available to the practicing advocates. However, well said that we wanted the advocates. We want the advocates for the. Hello? Yeah. However, wonderful we say that advocates also can be a part of the teaching, and we can call them as visiting faculty, guest faculty, whatever it to teach the skills or the clinical papers. The best of the advocate don't come because they don't have time, because they're so much busy in their profession. Hardly some advocates do come, they're exceptional. But most of the advocates who want to contribute, they need the support economically or socially. For that reason, they join as teachers, and they're not able to really impart the necessary skill what is needed for the student on a particular problem. Because he doesn't have a case, he comes to the court, to the law school to teach. That's a difficulty. So we teachers who don't have that particular skill to teach this particular subject, the advocates who are learned and who are skillful, they don't have time to come and teach. So there is a gap. This gap need be realized. This gap need be realized. And how are you going to look into this particular gap? I will tell you, there is a lot of skills like advocacy skill, ability in oral and written communication. And I've seen this written communication in all my experience. We ask the student to write small plain paper application. I'm sorry to say that the student lose their language. They have been deviating from the basic learning methods. They make an application which hardly conveys anything what he wants. Forget regarding the legal language. Even the plain common sense application is not coming out properly. So the ability of oral and written communication is very, very important. The reasoning and the persuasion, making ethically permissible decisions. What type of decisions should be made? Whether the claim can be taken into confidence, whether the matter can be taken up, whether you are confident enough to take up the case. If you are not confident, how the case can be dealt with, and whether you know the subject at all, including skills such as intervene. Even to interview claims, you should not touch on the sensitive aspect of him. You cannot undermine him. He's a human being. He needs his support. For that reason, has come. And you cannot, whatever the horrible status of his, you need to understand the problem as it is and what he wants. So the art of intervening and a field research, and you know pretty well these are the days now we are shifting from the litigation to ADR, alternate dispute resolution. And it means a lot of negotiation, mediation, counseling. I think these three things are wonderful things. Mediation, negotiation, counseling. And for that reason, you really don't, you really require a learning right from the day number one in the law school. What is it you're going to learn in negotiation at the day number one? Think your behavior, your attitude, your mannerism, your language, and your body dynamics. All those things really to be taught right from the day number one in the school. Where is the time? We know pretty well Bar Council of India gives us this many number of subjects. University says this is the subject we have to conduct examination, and this is the type of mark that is, and students are interested in their grades, and we are not really able to give whatever our best intention and interest may be to provide clinical legal aid or provide what is called as NSS and all those particular avenues are there, are clinical legal education. We are not able to really give. This is happening because it's not singularly the fault of the law school or the teacher or the fault of the profession. The fault lies in the whole of the system. And this need to be rectified. Professor Menon was discussing, debating and advocating this clinical legal education at the what is called as law polytechnic. Has to happen in a big manner. This is the future. But it was very difficult to convince the Bar Council of India. In 1996, they brought 4 papers which they said clinical legal education papers which are compulsory. They said drafting and pleading. They said moot courts. They said ADR paper and professional ethics and accounting. All these particular things, who is going to teach? How this should be taught? Are the teachers really trained for this? This is the question probably that we need to think. Are we trained? Are we really passionate enough in teaching this type of subjects? Are we really concerned how to make a wonderful law school? Are we really concerned how to make the legal education working from our institution, and I am the teacher who is trying to work for the social justice? What is the agenda of the law school? When I ask anybody, what is the agenda of your law school? What are your objectives? Simple, they say, we wanted to make it a center of excellence. Wonderful. What is the, in what area you wanted to make center of excellence? Sir, by teaching, pedagogy, research, etc., etc. But the question is the agenda of a law school is one of the, in the scheme of things, is an institution which is meant for taking ahead the justice system. What justice system? It is a justice system basically for the social justice. How are you going to do this? Have you ever thought of this particular agenda of the law schools? Neither the teachers have been recruited on that basis, nor the institution is created on that particular basis, nor the bar council when it comes for inspection, it looks in on that particular basis. It looks in terms of infrastructure and the course curriculum and course design and whatever they have given. And there ends the matter. And they insist 70%, 75%, 80%, whatever the attendance that it has. And where is the student? Where is the time for the student to go to the fields? Where are the slots? And have we made this particular student trained? Okay, after completing his this number of classwork, he should be still available to go into the fields and work hard. And going to the field means what? How many hours? Can that be counted in terms of hours? For the purpose of 2 credits or 3 credits or 4 credits? Maybe 60 hours or 30 hours? Can you count on that way? Maybe a problem, maybe only one problem, it may consume almost your 60 hours. And your learning may be limited, but still the problem is problem and problem has to be attended. There may be quite a number of problems you might have solved within 10, 15, 20 minutes too, or 10 hours or 15 hours too. But the question is, the fields, the autonomy of legal education should be available in clinical legal education. And I have answers for these particular things because I have been thinking on this particular matter for quite a long time. These facets of skill development and skill components somehow has to get into the law school. As long as we as a law school, we are not able to produce a practice-ready law student. Until then, the issues of placement, the issues of, I'll tell you, ill-prepared law students, and the student again will be going and investing his 1 or 2 years again in the court to start his real profession, and he is not able to contribute. And how are you going to do? I'm not glorifying things, but I'll try to tell to you one particular thing. At Bombay, I have seen the Government Law College very closely. Government Law College is one of the very reputed colleges of Bombay, and courts in Bombay really function wonderfully well. I'll tell you, I don't have the experience of Kerala, but I'll tell you the courts across the country when you look into them, and courts in Bombay and courts of Bombay are definitely more progressive, business-minded, and justice-centered. And I give all place for Bombay courts, Bombay judiciary. And coming to the Government Law College, which is very situated near to the High Court of Bombay, practically the government or the education system don't understand what this particular legal education is again. But the Government Law College is making its wonderful space. And Government Law College has a very big history. Baba Saheb Ambedkar was the principal. Gokhale was the principal. Very big names of the country, they registered with Bombay Law College. This is called a GLC, Government Law College, Bombay. It is situated in Churchgate. Why I am trying to tell to you, the situation of this particular college is also important. The place it is placed is also important. And thank God, the government could not provide the necessary teachers. Thank God, Bar Council of India When it comes over there, they find everything is in order, but nothing is really in order according to the Bar Council of India standards. The students take the admission. Government Law College, getting a seat in Government Law College is really a better deal than even a National Law University. So getting a seat in Government Law College is definitely I should say it's a premier position. It's really a wonderful thing. And what happens over there? The student joins over there, attends his classes, 2-3 classes, whatever is possible, and rest of the day he immediately runs to the court. Day number 1, he joins the class not for the purpose. Bombay people are very much serious about earning money. They look everything in the monetized form. So they want to earn money. They want to earn their money for the purpose of education also. So they join to the class, and soon after the class they rush back to the courts. They join with one of the advocate as a clerk, as a junior, as an assistant, whatever the name you give. Maybe they will simply carry the files and go to the court and come back, and they'll be assisting the advocate that way. In this particular process, by the 5 years, believe it, they learn everything what happens in the court. Everything what happens in the court, right from the junior court to the high court. They know everything. Which room is where, which clerk is where, and what they have to doing, and how the clerk react, and how the judge react, how the files moves, and what the files should be written, and what are the papers should be written, who the advocates really means a business, who the advocates can be counted upon, not counted upon. All these things, everything they know within this particular 5-year course or 3-year course, whatever they study. Because they are undergoing what is called as a training, a clinical training voluntarily, and it is nowhere prescribed in the syllabus. Nowhere prescribed in the syllabus. I give 100 out of 100 to the particular school and children with a limited control from the academics, and whatever the academic they have to learn, they have been learning. Everything they are experiencing, and they are becoming the best. I'll tell you, they don't need really weights for any placement or any particular this thing. They know where they have to go at the end of 3rd year. I've been interviewing the students at the national law schools, asking them what is your future plan. At the 4th year, they're still not decided. But the student at Government Law College decided at the age of at the 2nd year and 3rd year what he's going to do. Whether he's going to work with a law firm, or whether he's going to work with a criminal lawyer or civil lawyer, or whatever the dimension that you want to work, he knows pretty well. So none of the student at Government Law College Bombay remains unemployed or working vacant without doing anything after getting the certificate. Before getting the certificate, he's already earning, he's already in the job, and he's in the profession full-fledged and doing the wonderful job. This is one of the things which really came to my mind. Oh, this institution is doing something different. For that reason, Bombay Law College, tell me what are the funds that is coming to that institution? It comes automatically. Who is the principal over there? The retired district judge or sitting judge of the high court, a sitting judge of a district court? Yeah, he is the principal of the college. How many teachers are there? There are 3 or 4 teachers. This is the reality. But the students, 100%. Wonderful. Not even one particular student will go out. And this is something gives us an indication what we need to think about a clinical legal education pedagogy. As long as we are not able to synchronize our legal education along with the practical needs, until then we are not very clear. For example, we as teachers, we are aware that we are preparing teaching templates. What do we write? The subject matter objective. We write 2 columns while preparing the syllabus. Subject matter objective, what subject areas in the law the student should be familiar with. This is what we are trying to write in a paragraph before taking a class. And second, I write down the learning objectives. After my class, what the students will be learning, and the matter in which the teacher wishes the students to be able to deal with the subject matter naturally dictated to the goals of legal education. These are the 2 things that we give. And first of all, while thinking of the clinical legal education, I as a teacher must be very clear in my goals. The teacher must be able to facilitate the learning process. If they try to clarify in their own minds, if I clarify in my own mind what specific goals of a particular lesson and how I'm going to treat this thing, and this particular teaching is going to influence on the minds of the student and his behavior tomorrow when he'll be going to the court or practice tomorrow. This is something probably we need to introspect. So teaching methods should be informed, and the teaching methods can be anything, but simply giving a lecture without exposure to the field is of no use. And there is no specific pedagogy as such, but you can use any of these particular methods, maybe role play, maybe a problem solving methods. They sounds wonderful. Maybe a group discussion, maybe a lecture also, no problem. Clinical methods engage one in a whole range of thinking about a particular problem and act like a lion, particularly when the student deals with a real life situation in a legal aid clinic. So legal aid clinic is definitely a wonderful thing, but legal aid clinic has been made blunt by its operation, by the system, by the court, by the real. Suppose you make a legal clinic, somebody comes to you for legal aid. You don't know how to really accommodate him and sustain him for until the logical end. We give them advice half-heartedly. We are not sure that whether our advice is correct. We never verify them. We never go along with him. Now we see that these particular things, we don't make a follow-up. It is something where exactly we fail. And we don't, the same particular persons who have been in charge of that particular problem is not available for the second time. Somebody else new will be coming, and again the problem starts from the one. Whatever is the clinical legal aid has to be relooked. It is one of the very important dimensions of clinical learning. So why I'm trying to tell you clinical legal aid, I told you sometime back, the environment of the institution. Government law college is in an ecosystem which is nearer to the court, nearer to the secretariat, nearer to the society. It is very nicely placed in a system to get an exposure of everything. It's very fortunate that way. But it doesn't mean that we are not fortunate if our institution is situated in some other particular place. It's up to us how we need to think, how my institution can play a role, how my students can really learn this thing, and that requires a passionate, committed teacher. At least every law school should identify 1/3 of its teachers who have been very much involved in the clinical research and clinical discussions and clinical parameters. That passion is very important. And if they are passionate enough to help the society, and they will build up the team. And once the team is built up, the learning is totally different. I told you the learning is totally different. Clinical methods are always new. You cannot stereotype the methods. I can tell you standard rules of this thing, this thing, this thing. But if you will try to utilize the same molds, it will not work out. And law is always in general terms. When it application is applied in the particular individual cases, individual system. That is the reason in criminal law, when we say maximum punishment is this, when the sentencing is given, lot of disparity. And this disparity is really. And how are you going to settle the disparity? The disparity between the judgment and the sentencing is glaring, and this is also real. The reason is crimes are committed individually, so individualistic justice has to happen. And clinically it is possible to do individualistic justice. For that reason, every particular individual situation is a new situation. every particular individual plays a new ecosystem. For that reason, you in a clinical system, you have always newer dynamics and newer methods, newer things, and new thinking. And this can only happen provided you start thinking how to apply these particular situations into different situations. Does it mean that we have to do some other courses? We need to have more number of courses? Does it mean our theoretical courses should be cushioned in skill development components? Does it mean that our clinical legal education paper, 4 papers which have been given by Bar Council of India, should be rethought over in different pedagogy? I'll tell you, keep all the 6 together. Whatever you have been doing, you do, no issue. But something more than that you have to do now. If you wanted to make your institution or legal education, and if you wanted to be a teacher, you're different. If you wanted to make yourself really to contribute to the society, you need to think something more. I will tell you by an analogy. Every particular clinical course is having a social action goal, which I call as SAG. The social action goal is very, very important. If you don't understand and realize this social action goal, so also your law school is having a social action goal. Legal education is also having a social action goal. And if this particular goal is not being achieved, you are not really doing. In other words, I'm questioning the very working and functioning of a legal education, whether we are able to reach to the particular social justice demand of the educational model that we have. And this is possible. It's not it's a very difficult thing, but the only thing is attitudinal difference. And the only thing is that we need to work a little more. And we work in a team, and we need to work with a zeal that we have to create the students. Tomorrow these particular students will become practice ready. The moment they go to the court, they don't really need to pause at every particular step to find out what next. They must be able to understand and think and reach to the place and take the law and leads. So if the student is not able to lead the law and take the law, and we're not really delivering what is expected of the law school. Even after so many years, I'll tell you the first turnover has been done by Professor Madhav Menon when he started this National Law School of India, University of Bangalore. With a small team of teachers, with a wonderful scheme of curriculum, with a heavy emphasis on this particular clinical mode of teaching, the courses went on. If you look and compare what Madhav Menon was doing in the year 1986, 87, 88, 89, 90, and today, 2015, 2016, 17, 18, 19, 20, lot of differences. I don't know, even Professor Menon, I don't know whether he was really happy when he was going to the National School Bangalore and seeing the way things are happening. He found everything happening except clinical legal education. And he always thought over how to put this particular court and the school together. Practice and the learning together. This was one of his very important agenda. For that reason, at one particular point of time, he was also thinking of how to bring this particular young advocates again to a type of teaching and learning scheme. And he has already worked out a scheme along with our Attorney General of India, K.K. Venugopal. I don't know what has happened to that institution today. With the Kerala government to handhold some of the advocates so that they can do justice to the society, bring social justice to the society. And this is an extension of what we have failed at law school. If we can really do our job at the law school, probably this particular situation would not have come. My dear friends, I must submit over here. When I was trying to do my research, I'm trying to explain how important and what is clinical legal education, what clinical education may be, or to that extent what empirical research is, what research can be. And every particular legal studies involves research. And in other faculties of social science and other particular area, the research happens only after they complete their post-graduation. But in law alone, the research starts from the day number one. The student joins. That is the reason Professor Madhav Menon insisted every particular student has to do a project work so that he'll make an independent research and come out whatever it is worth to. That research is very important. That will explain us what is the mind of the student, how the student can think and what the student is thinking and how the particular student thinking can be synchronized for the future of his legal learning and accumulating knowledge. How the student is setting his standards, how the student is ethical, how the student is moral enough. And every one of us need to introspect on that. And I was doing my research when at that particular time there is nothing called as legal research method. Research method, when we want to speak, we have been speaking over here, we have been normally speaking of social science researchers. Even till date, I don't find really a research method specific for legal research. And if it is there, it is definitely not being taught. But every one of us are doing our research, legal research in law. Thank God this multidisciplinary system has already come. And multidisciplinary system is very, very important. Whenever legal research we've been thinking earlier, before I started pursuing my research, I was only made to think in a doctrinal manner with the inductive logic. Never had the chance and opportunity to think beyond inductive logic, in the sense what is written in the judgment, how the judgment has been written, how did the advocate advance the argument, and how these particular things have been assimilated, and how the reasoning has been made, and ultimately how this particular order has come down, and how the problem is being attended and solved. This is what we have been made to think. But there is a vast other thing, that the social reality, the social situation, the experience of the judge, the experience of an advocate, and how the advocate is able to think that way. What was his environment? Where did he learn this thing? And to which society is applying this law? And how did he make this particular law applicable? And how the judge is giving a judgment, for example, in a public interest litigation case. There's no law. In a totally new area, judge has to invent a law. How the judge is able to do that? And what is it is happening? And whether it is a justice system. These things were not known to legal education before 1980s. All the public interest litigation, everything started coming only after the year 1980. I'm speaking of research before that. When I was conducting my research, for a moment, I was working on adolescent offenders or young adult offenders or the juvenile offenders, let's say. And this particular juvenile justice system or the younger, where do you get the data? You go to the court, start getting the data from these particular cases. For a young researcher like me, it's very difficult because you have to pay money for getting the judgment, which is not in only your consent. The documents are not open to you. You cannot read all the papers, the case history. And if you don't read the case history, you don't understand the case. Even if you understand the case, you are not able to understand accept the legal points. You are not able to understand something which are called multidisciplinary things, the sociology of the law, the economics of the law, and the historical aspects of the law. These things we need to read through the cases. And I was wondering, how do I do this research? I was approaching every particular professor in the country to tell me what is the research methodology. How do I complete with this research? Everybody was telling the same story, ultimately without any conclusion. And even you start conducting your own research today, I'm sure, I'm confident, if it is not interdisciplinary, if it is purely legal research, you will get into this particular issue. So I started looking into things. There's no meaning of asking anybody, I have to invent my method. That is the starting point of my research. When I started thinking that I have to do it myself and I have to solve the problem, I got a clue. I could make friends in the juvenile institutions or the Boston school institutions and got the data from the people, and I have interviewed the people and I have also got the data, the original data. And I started looking at this data, how I interpret them into law and what type of legal answers I can address to. Believe it, I found wonderful conclusions and new interpretations. And once I got this particular interpretation, my research has become easy. And I have been searching for almost 3 years without any particular clue. And all of my research took, once I understood the methods, I should do this way, it only completed in 1 year. This skill you have to learn in the law school. Who is that particular teacher trained today to impart the skill to the law student? That is the question. I wish all of we law teachers should have also some particular exposure to courts and the system that we want to really impart to the students. Maybe we are sending our student to internship, 1 month internship. Instead of that, probably the institution should send the teachers who are really passionate enough in taking the social justice agenda ahead. They should be given maybe 6 months to 1 year a study leave to go to the court, local court, and prepare a syllabus in the course curriculum by which he'll be able to educate, give the skills necessary for being a practitioner in that particular court. This is possible. I will tell you, when I really wanted to teach a clinical paper, I started taking this particular clinical paper only after going to the court. I joined with the senior counsel. I said, I'll be coming every day from 11 o'clock onwards and I'll be with you. And I stayed with him for about 6 months. Soon after my classes I completed in the college, I used to run immediately from there to the advocate. I used to move along with him wherever he goes, like a tailpiece. Whether he has any work or I have any other material, I've been just tailing him for a 6 month period. I learned a lot. What is he interacting? What are his semantics? What is signifying? What is the semiotics of law? What type of symbols he is giving? What are the words that he is using? How is he interacting with the fellow advocates? And how he is making a mark in the court? How he has been taken into the confidence of the judge? Yes, here is an advocate who is not misleading the court. Yes, he the person who can be trusted. When the judge trusts, I think your work is almost done as an advocate. You must create that particular feeling or the feeling in the mind of the judge, in the mind of your own colleagues, in the court, in the advocates, in the client, everywhere. Here is an advocate who is not going to cheat you. Here is an advocate who will not mislead you. Here is an advocate who is knowledgeable enough. Then you are a practitioner. How are you going to have these things? I'll tell you, I learned all the things after moving with this particular advocate called Achyutan for a period of around 6 months. Then I started preparing my syllabus. My whole objective was how to prepare the syllabus for the clinical legal education. I was preparing a syllabus for legal aid clinic. And for me, this particular course was extra course. After the class is over, and I had a clinic. It's an open clinic, a voluntary clinic. It will be open for a particular 4 hours. And those students who are interested in doing this social work, they'll be coming and participating. It's a voluntary. And my clinic became very busy space from 4 p.m. onwards up to around 9 p.m. Because we have been not only giving advice, we have been trailing this particular character to whom we have given advice, what he is doing. After listening us, how we have changed him. In any way, our speaking to him, our advices to him, does it impact in him in the particular person who is seeking our advice in any way or not? And the client, the person who has come for aid or services, he may forget us, but we never used to forget him. We used to trail him. And in this particular process, we have won the confidence of the society. What the advocate gains with a 5 years, 6 years practice, that's what a clinic has to gain. Clinic as an institution has to gain an experience. Clinic as a unit has to gain a reputation. The clinic, the school's clinic, the law school's, law college clinic has to be operational. It should be Monday, Sunday, Saturday, holiday, no holiday, raining, no raining, disasters, no disasters, floods, everything. This particular clinic has to be open for a particular period of time. If somebody comes to your clinic, he may forget you, but you shouldn't forget him. You should see how this particular person goes. You have to trail him. And I assure you, my dear friends, those particular people who have been working with the clinic, they are graduating themselves, forgetting your traditional degrees and diplomas. He is graduating himself into a wonderful advocate. He is becoming a wonderful advocate. Just like a clerk in the court. Without degree, he can tell you many things, what happens in the court and what can happen in the court. The same way, this particular student who attended to my clinic, they became a practically wonderful, different persons. And for them, the court was not something new. They knew the court, every corner of the court, every dimension of the court, every person in the court, every advocate in the court, all my students knew. And this is also knowledge. Is it a knowledge? Is it a knowledge? Is it a learning process? You may ask me. That's what, my dear friends, the young advocates for 5 years they'll be doing. For 5 years they'll be doing only this thing. Once they know everybody, once they become friend of everybody, things will be different. As a student, these people, they can go 2 steps ahead. As a young independent advocate, you'll have to struggle hard. Somebody may speak to you, somebody may not speak to you. You have your own egos, tempers, different dimensions. But as a student, you have nothing. I can go and meet anybody. I can introduce myself as a student of so-and-so institution. I've come on this particular work, and can you help me? I have no ego feeling. I have nothing to feel complex. But as a young advocate, I have many problems. If you go and ask somebody, I'm so-and-so young advocate, I'm not able to learn this thing. Can you explain me? The other advocate is going to say, Kaha pad liya? Where did you study? Oh, that is the school you studied. Okay, read this book and come tomorrow. Don't waste my time. He can tell you this way. He can critique you. He can demotivate you. He can unnerve you. But as a student, you have nothing to feel bad. My dear friends, we need to immediately, I'll tell you, if I have to give a placement to a student, I must know a law firm, what they're doing in the second year, not in the fresher. A fresher, if he goes to law school, I'm not bothered what is he doing. I want to know at the second year what he'll be doing. If I can train my student that today in the law school, then I'm doing the clinical course. Believe it, this has happened. I'll give you some clues. A small items. Will. Every one of us know what is a will. And executing a will is a very easy thing. You don't really require much of legal listening, but it is 100% legal. How it can be useful, you know pretty well. And today, in our country, we are a nucleus family. And because of the change of demography, old age couples are more today. They've been living isolated. The young children are working in America, UK, etc., etc. And father and mother, they are working. They have been staying in the house old age, along with the neighbors. Hardly they communicate with the neighbors, and they are all isolated people. And when somebody dies in the family, For example, the husband dies, the wife doesn't know where the property is, what the property is, and how to handle the property. And if a will is there, the wife will be able to know things, can execute it. She knows her position. And the children also, they are staying outside the country. They don't know whether the father is having a crores of rupees or nothing. They never knew. They come, even if they knew also, they don't know where the property is and how to get the property. What are the documents? If the particular property is divided in a will, there's no conflict among the children. Otherwise, the children will conflict. Brother will become an enemy of a sister, sister will become enemy of somebody, and all this particular conflict will be there within the family. And one will document can solve the problem. And I said my students, well, there are many apartments in our colony. Why don't you go and teach to everybody what this will is? Teaching is very difficult. And you do one thing, you take out photocopies of the standard will document, write down one small paragraph what this particular will can be. Not more than 2 lines, 2 minutes. You must be able to explain. Just go and distribute this particular will document to everybody and come back first day. Tell them, go after 1 week, try to collect the documents back. हमने document दिया था, आपने पढ़ा है या नहीं? I have given you a document. Have you seen it? Will it be useful to you? And if the particular person has read, he may ask you your help. The particular person is not read, he is not using it. He'll be wondering, why did you give and why you are asking? You'll explain it. I gave for reading, and if it's not useful to you, you shouldn't have it. Somebody can use it. And in the process, he'll be learning things. And believe it, at least 30% will be executing a will, which can be changed at any time, you know pretty well. I don't need to tell to you. So you are able to create a conscious elderly society where they know where the property is, what the property is. Otherwise, the property, your hard-earned property, will be taken away by somebody else, which you have not able to donate or give or make use while you have been living, and you have been greedily holding all his lifetime. That particular property, soon after your death, has been lost. And believe it, it is a success. My students who came out, they wanted to experiment many more documents that way. I said, come up with ideas. This small silly idea was there in my mind, I have given you. I'm already an old man, and I only can think of ideas which are old. You need to think as a young man how you can do. Some students, they came and said, they spoke, we can take care of the hawkers in the roads. Yes, they have done some particular survey, and they collected data. They understood the social reality, why the problem cannot be attended, why the problem can be attended. So also I'll tell you, umpteen number of areas are there around your society, around your institution, and we need to really go clinical. And for going clinical, we don't need to really have a syllabus and a course curriculum and an examination system. This is the minimum of the role and the service that we are supposed to give to the society, because we are studying law, because we are students of law. And this is what the social justice expected out of a community who call themselves a law students or law school. And I don't, for doing something voluntarily, we don't really require somebody's support. And if you're, as an education institution, you're doing it, believe it, you are adding feathers on your cap. As an education institution, you are able to identify 1/4 or 1/3 of your teachers as clinical teachers is just fantastic. This is what exactly medical college is. Medical college, 2/3 are theoreticians, 1/3 are clinicians. And because of the clinicians, the outpatient department goes on wonderfully well. Students learn in outpatient department. And these particular teachers, while treating these outpatients, they teach and explain. They teach and explain. And that is what we are back. I say you should create what is called law polytechnic. Law polytechnic, maybe a boot camp you can think of. As an institution, you don't need to really take anybody's permission. Only thing is you need to have a will. Little bit of extra cushion and extra money and extra time and extra involvement. If the institution probably need to recruit at least half a dozen of teachers, not for the purpose of teaching law, but for the teaching clinic only. This is an extra. Bar Council says you would have to have 1:20. All these things are regulations. I'm not speaking of regulations. It's over, beyond the regulation, beyond the regulation. I'm giving extra knowledge to my student. Who is going to stop me? Can I not do that? This is the challenge. What most of the law institutions, they don't bother. They say this rule is not available. This course, this subject is not there in the course. The moment the student will learn that by this knowledge, I am something in the society, your work is done. And I have done that. I'm qualified enough to say that you people also can do as an institution. My institutional rating has gone high because of my students. They could go into the field, they could engage. My students never used to go and waste time. I'll tell you one more small example. I'll tell you before I end up and open the floor for discussion. Every particular city in the country, every particular place in the country, observe what is called Traffic Safety Week being conducted by the police department. They invest quite a lot of money. They don't have a clue what they have to do. What they do is they arrange all the important traffics in a colorful banner, lighting. They put some hoardings. They say, follow the traffic rules. This is it. But I have not done that. I went to the police commissioner at Visakhapatnam, where I was a principal. I requested the police commissioner, sir, this year Traffic Safety Week will be able, can you teach to all the citizens in this particular city about the traffic rules? I can give you 1,000 volunteers. 1,000 volunteers. The commissioner was a little surprised and he said, what is this? Sir, I have law students who can teach to the public in every particular important traffic area what are the basic minimum traffic rules. My hidden agenda was I had some difficult students who never used to do, who are always used to violate the traffic. Were notorious enough in driving. I have to teach them a lesson. I involved this particular method. It should be clinical. I took the commissioner of police. I wanted to make the whole police department my student's friend. If the police is a friend of the student is not going to violate the law. I wanted to assimilate all the police and the law students together. How do I do that? I took the Traffic Safety Week into the consideration. And the commissioner was very friendly to me. He agreed what should be done. I said, sir, from your side, you give one particular constable, traffic constable who will be there in the junction. I'll give you around 10 students in a junction. All 100 junctions will be manned with my students. You have to give some particular cap because it is summer, they'll be standing in the summer, hot, and you have to give one particular ID card displaying on a badge that they're participating in the Traffic Safety Week. And they've added some more thing. In the sense, you know pretty well, most of the vehicles, they are scooters and motorcycles, they go without following pollution norms. And the blackening and the headlights. So somebody was there with the black paint, somebody was there with the mechanic to test whether the pollution level free of cost. To set the vehicles right, but they cannot go violating the traffic. That was the principle. So that is what they have been done. That these particular students at every particular junction, when the police constable stop the vehicle, these particular people, they used to go and teach them. Believe it, all my students knew by heart. I told them to by heart the traffic rules, regulations as an institute in the city. And what are the minimum rules? What are the maximum rules? And what are the various acts? Everything they have by hearted. Then only I will said that I am going to allow you to go to the traffic. Believe it, all the students of the college, they participated in this program. It was 7 days, no classes. 7 days, right from morning to evening, they have been doing this particular job. Still, they are not interested in coming in. You have to plan accordingly, boys and girls together. Things will go on with me because they don't want to go homogeneous. And they learned a lot. Do you believe it? I'll tell you, students have learned a lot. They've been educated. They become socially responsible. The next time when they have been driving their own vehicles, somebody must be observing to whom they have taught. So they have to be careful. And they must be knowing the police through whose traffic they may be passing. They have to be responsible. So they have become honest. They have become educated. They have become learned. They have become law-abiding. So also the society became. This is clinical legal education. This is social justice dispensation. And I will tell you, it was all done again for a big money. I will tell you, people started these people, they started collecting voluntarily some money, whatever you can pay, because I have repaired your, I have taken care of your pollution control. I have taken your made some painting, 2 rupees, 3 rupees, 5 rupees. The total money that they have collected at the end of 7 days was staggering around 6.5 lakhs. And the police commissioner says, what am I going to do with this money? It is your money. I said this, what I'm going to do with the institution? We had so many other grand plans for conducting a permanent clinical services club. I called it a club. I did not call it a center. I called it Legal Services Club. And whenever anybody has a free time, they'll be coming over there, they'll be discussing about the law problems, as much as what has been happening in the bar. And we created the environment, we created the books, we gave them the gadgets, and we gave them the support system. If somebody wants some particular money support, this particular 6.5 lakhs was available to us, we started giving them. We kept a record on that. Money started coming, money used to come. There are many philanthropists who can give you few lakhs. It's not an issue. But the only thing is you have to dispense and discharge the responsibility as a social law-abiding citizen of the country. My dear friends, there are plethora of methods by which you can really help the society. Being a law student, it's a privilege of yours. It's a privilege of the law school. You being a law school, you have to conduct something extra classes, some extra boot camps to cushion your children. If he is your child, are you going to complete the class and thereafter you vanish? No. Consider every student of your school is your student. Go one more step ahead. An advocate, father advocate teaches to son advocate in a different manner. Be that difference. Be that particular assimilator. Be that particular teacher. And this is what is required from the clinical teacher. And this is what is clinical legal education. And with this particular few words, I can't really say this is the mold pedagogy. There can be an umpteen number of pedagogies. You have to invent, you have to create, you have to read to the students, you have to contribute to the system. Thank you very much for giving this wonderful opportunity. And if I have time further, or is it okay?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So this is a wonderful session. There are certain questions being put forward in the chat box.
Yeah, most important. Okay, let's see. Can you read some questions?
Bipasha, can you read?
I shall read them to you. The first question is, the Bar Council of India has not defined what is clinical courses, and there is no unique or form of teaching this course. Can you please highlight how the KID Law School imparts it?
Yeah, if you don't have a definition, all the most welcome. If you are having a definition, you are in a bold. Because Bar Council of India created clinical courses, 4 papers. What is you doing under the 4 papers? Moot court? Moot court is happening much more better other than the course. Every student goes prepared to moot courts to participate across the country. Much differently, much better than what is being taught in this particular moot court class exercises. So that is the answer. If you define, you are being limited. If you are not defined, your creative ability is the answer. You need to create your own definition and go ahead. That is clinical.
Yes, sir. Now there's another question. Sir, do you think the teaching of professional ethics can be tactfully handled through clinical legal education?
Yeah, ethics is a very important thing. How we get into the 4 corners of ethics? Ethics of yours, not my ethics. And how do you set our standards? Ethics is nothing but setting our own standards. You need to get exposed to the situations. You need to feel empathy of the society. Then you understand this is right and this is wrong. To take a decision, and to distinguish them from right and wrong, and thereafter setting a standard. I should not copy and paste something. Who has to dictate this thing? Plagiarism rules? A Tintron? Turn it on? No. I'm writing a paper. I'm trying to help him. Can there be any adulteration in helping? You help or you don't help. So this is what is ethics. Now coming to professional ethics, absolutely you have to set your standards. To what extent, how far you can help somebody, and to what extent and what you understand is right and wrong. How do you put the lines of difference, and what purpose you're doing this thing? So these things will be evolving out of your general education, out of the social realities. You'll be setting your limits, and ethics cannot be really taught. It has to be imbibed. I have to fix up my goals. I have to fix up my standard. Somebody will tell, okay, I can copy 2 lines. Somebody will tell I can copy 10 lines. Somebody will tell I can copy 1 page. For this examination, I may copy and pass. So where is the standards? Who is going to put the thing? And all the people will be getting the same degree. Tomorrow in the court, he may be better. So this is not, the ethics is something very interesting area. Probably you need to understand yourself. Understanding yourself is your own ethics points. And professionally, how you will deliberate, how will you conduct? That is very important thing. That is how professional ethics need to be probably understood. This is what I always follow.
There is one more question.
Yes, sir. The next question is that you mentioned the system itself is flawed or rather disempowering, and so aspiring lawyers take years to become real professionals. Why do you think the system is stagnant, or rather that due efforts are not made or that they're not sufficient enough?
Can you repeat the question? I have be slow a little bit, okay?
Yes, sir. You mentioned that the system is flawed or rather disempowering, and so aspiring lawyers take years to become real professionals. Why do you think the system is stagnant or that due efforts made are not enough?
Yeah, I'll tell you, system is evolving. Nothing is static. You are developing. What was the law 10 years before, 20 years before, 100 years before? It's not the same thing. We have all changed. We have been changing. And in the change, in any particular situation, there are things which are advantageous. There are things which are disadvantageous. Those disadvantageous things, we should not call it a flaw unless deliberately you have thought of it. But there are system changes and disadvantages and advantages that need to be understood. And along with the system evolves, we need to evolve ourselves. We don't need to get stuck up pointing a finger that something is flawed, something is wrong somewhere, and I am the Messiah who have to take care of and do things. No. I have to get on. I have to get on along with others, and I have to see the system goes on. Nobody should get stuck at the ends, and everybody has to move. So this is what I believe. So we don't need to really look where the flaw lies. I only need to look how I can help myself and help others also to go on and get on. And the system has to function. And we have to be with the system. If the system is not functioning, there must be some particular methods. I can make it functional. That is the commitment that is required. You don't need to say, because this particular thing is not happening, I can't do this thing. No. I've been telling you, Bar Council of India is giving a rule, your college is giving a rule, your university is giving a rule. But beyond all these rules also, there is a rule for you can devise. Who is asking you to study 2 more extra hours for getting a gold medal? You study. Who is asking you to go and read in the library for 3 more hours? You're studying. And the library bench may not be correct. Maybe the books in the library may not be available. Maybe the required book is not available to you. Suppose you start complaining the book is not available, I don't know study. Let the book come to me. The book is not clear enough. The first page is gone, torn, and somebody has done some. All these things, if you start pointing out some error, and the place in the library is not conducive, whenever you're reading, there are other boys who are there, they have been making nuisance over there, then you cannot study. And tomorrow when you go to the courts for making an argument, the whole court will be in a different shape. And you can't say this is a bad or good. Everybody is interested in their own business. You mind your own business and come out. Every advocate goes to the court and sees his own business. He never bothers what is happening adjacent to him. He bothers about his own case and comes out. The same way, we don't need to get into any particular jumble of law, but we need to find out a method where we can do something better and how we can help the system. We should be always progressive in our thinking, positive in our thinking. We should not get caught by the negatives of the society.
Okay, so there's one more question. We often say that idealism is dead. Coming to the legal profession, ethics is replaced by business, the person feels. So is this just a perception or is it a reality?
Again, please.
We often say that idealism is dead, and coming to the legal profession, ethics is replaced by business. Or it is understood like that. So is this just a perception or a reality?
I think legal profession is the only profession which is a wonderful profession. And the way the profession has happened, it's purely on voluntary basis. And without any expectation. The beginning and starting point of legal profession, where is it? If you look into it, it is nothing but social work. You have a feeling when you study law and look to the law subject as such and the profession as such, because you know certain things, you want to help the people. Because you help the people, you want to earn some money out of that. Because you can't simply do this thing without having particular life sustenance. And early advocates, they even never bothered what their status is. They worked hard and they've been helping, and they never bothered to count their money. What is the pay money that the council that the client has paid? In other words, my point is the legal profession is a noble profession, and it has to be understood. It is mostly misunderstood. Particularly, I'll tell you a situation. When you join into law school and you go and tell to your grandmother, I've joined into law school. The first question that your grandmother is going to ask to you, oh, in the law school. My God, I thought that you'll be a doctor or engineer. Now you're studying law. You're telling lies everywhere. All black and white and white and black. What is this course? We listen to that question. We don't know what to answer. Sometimes we smile it off and we don't defend. We never care to take what this my granny is speaking. Where did she got this conception? Why is she having this conception? Is it not my responsibility to explain to her? Her conception is wrong. Legal profession is a noble profession. Have I taken any such particular attitude to explain to anybody? Forget your grandmother. Even there are people who have been in another profession. They'll be sometimes pointing a finger to your profession. You never knew how to answer him. And you simply accept it. So the wrong is ours. As long as you don't know how to honor yourself and you don't understand the dignity of your own profession, I told you it's a noble profession. It has a lot of dignity. This dignity has been undermined. And unless you show yourself seriousness in the profession, that is the reason we call the judges. We know they are not the lords, but we call them lordship. We know they are not lords. They are an ordinary human like us. But we wanted to create a picture to the world. Look, they are the people, something grand. They are going to dispense justice. We look to the advocate, we make a lot of fuss because we wanted to make the claims. You must understand, he is an advocate. He is the Messiah. He is going to help you out. So this particular responsibility also lies with us in our education system. If you are not serious, for example, as a student, I'll tell you, I'm happy to see you people in a particular wonderful dress, but most of the students, they don't bother to adequately dress and appropriately dress for the learning that they have. If you come in a discipline, you enhance your dignity. If you're not systematic, you're not disciplined, people will take you casually. And that's what's happening. We've been taken casually because our people, they keep helping. They're so good people, no liars. They keep helping whether you like or you don't like. And so it's for you, and we people need to create our own dignity, maintain our own status and prestige. The moment we explain to the public, well, you come to a right person, we're not misleading you, we'll try to help whatever the best, then automatically legal profession will be taken with respect. So this is how I wanted to answer this question.
Thank you so much, sir, for answering all our questions with such care and clarity. It's been a truly frank and engaging session and an eye-opener into this specific domain of law and the reality of law. I now invite Alina Johnson for the vote of thanks.
Thank you, Bipasha. A warm afternoon to one and all present here. I'm Alina Johnson, and it's my great privilege to propose the vote of thanks today. Despite the raging pandemic around us, it's a matter of great pleasure to note that the spirit of learning and intellectual curiosity has not been dampened. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank our college for indulging us with accomplished and expert resource persons with extensive experience under their belts. I'd like to convey my deepest gratitude to our distinguished speaker, Dr. Bhavani Prasad Panda, Director, KIIT Law School, and former Vice Chancellor of Maharashtra National Law University, for graciously taking out time for us from his busy schedule and for enlightening us on the clinical aspects of legal education. Sir, as legal aspirants, your insights will undoubtedly benefit us in our time ahead. Most importantly, I'd like to thank our respected principal, Dr. John P.C., our devoted director, Father Koshi Aisapunnamutal, and Dr. Jijimon Sir, HOD of the Law Department, for continuing to provide us with such interesting sessions that constantly help us in expanding our horizons. Thank you for keeping in mind our intellectual needs while bringing new speakers to enlighten us. I'd also like to extend my gratitude to all those who worked hard to make this program a success. At last, but certainly not the least, I'd like to voice my thanks to all those who participated and attended this session. Thank you everyone for your time. God bless.